Hello, hello, hello! Greetings, salutations, konnichiwa, and every other form of green across this vast, marvelous multiverse. I am Matsu Quinox. This is Horace, and welcome back, my dear, wonderful, marvelous, amazing scholars, to the study. I hope you're all doing well this fine, wonderful evening, afternoon, or morning. Hello there, Dr. Zedium. Welcome. Glad to have you here. I hope you're doing well this fine, wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, whatever I just said. Ah, as for myself, it's been a very busy week. It's been so busy. Today was a frantic day. We were getting ready for the stream, and things were just not going according to plan. As you probably saw, there might have been a delay, but we got that fixed out, so everything's going according to plan now. Whatever that means. Oh, hello there, Julian20. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Glad to have you here. Good to see both of you here. It's wonderful to have all you marvelous scholars here. Oh, boy, I'm already tired. Let me get a little drink of water. Oh, there we are. All right. Oh, so, how are all of you doing? I talked enough about myself. How are both of you doing? Or all of you scholars doing, wherever you are? I hope you're doing well. Hmm. Oh well. Whoa, whoa! Thank you for the subscription, Julian20. Thank you! Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. It means quite a lot. Ah, I appreciate it. Ah, Julian20, fabulous. Good to hear it. Good to hear it. I'm always glad to hear when wonderful dear scholars are doing well. Mm. As I said before, I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. The holidays are happening, and we're trying to get everything ready here in the study. Trying to find all the rooms. Julian20, because you are so lovable. Ah, thank you. I'm not that great. I'm not that special or great or anything like that. There's others who are far more better than me. But I just do my best. That's all I can say. That's all I can say. So, enough talk about me. I should talk about tonight's reading. We are reading tonight, after a week where, yeah, everything got delayed. Um, so tonight's book is one I've been dying to read, and I got so excited when I realized it was published in 1927, which should, in theory, mean it's in the public domain now. And it's a book called The Midnight Folk. Um, Not a lot of people have heard of it. More people have heard of the sequel, which is called The Box of Delights, which is, oh, you have heard of it. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. It's this book is pretty obscure though. Hello there, Private Maverick. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Glad to have you here. The Midnight Folk was written in 1927 by John Maisefield, um, poet and author. Uh, it is a children's book, a classic, in fact. Like I said, it's not as well known as its sequel, which is The Box of Delights, which unfortunately I'm not going to be able to read as much as I wish I could because it is such a wonderful story and is in fact a Christmas story too. But unfortunately, that book was written in 1935, so it is, yeah, it is still copyrighted. Um, Midnight Folk was written in 1927, which means it should technically be in the public domain, so I can read that. Which, given the season, I thought maybe we should read something a little different than the usual holiday fare. And I thought, why not? The two books are the only two books featuring the adventures of little young Kay Harker. Um, but yes, I really wanted to read this book. Before I get started, I will note, of course, that it was written in 1927, so there might be, can't remember exactly, but I believe there are some bits in it which have not aged well. We shall see about that. But again, I am so very excited to read this. The other interesting thing about this book is it has no chapters. It's just one long book, which means we're not going to so much stop at a chapter. We are going to stop whenever, the clock stops for me. So we might actually stop in the middle of action, or I might delay it so we can get through an action piece. So, my dear, lovely, marvelous, wonderful scholars, are we ready to begin this magical, fantastic journey? I know I am. I haven't read this book in a long time. I'm really excited. I bought a new copy, in fact, just for this. Uh, Julian 20, yes, please. Ooh, eager, eager. I always love my scholars when they're eager. All right, then. Excuse me. Let me clear my throat. So let us begin our reading of The Midnight Folk by John Maisefield. It had been an unhappy day for little Kay Harker. To begin with, at breakfast time, the governess had received a letter from his guardian, Sir Theopompus, the chemical powder merchant, to say that he would be there for lunch, but would like lunch at 2 p.m., as the trains did not suit. This made the governess cross, or as she called it, put out. On giving the order to Jane the cook for a very good lunch at 2 o'clock instead of 1, Jane was put out, for it was her afternoon off and she did not like to be put upon. Ellen the maid was also put out, because if you have lunch so late, it is tea time before you have finished washing up. Jane and Ellen between them put the governess much further out, and then it was lesson time. Divinity, French, history, and Latin. Divinity was easy, as it was about Noah's Ark. French was fairly easy, as it was about the cats of the daughter of the gardener. History was not at all easy, as it was all about beastly Odo. He longed for Odo to come into the room, saying, "I'm Odo," so that he could jolly well shut him up with, "Well, oh, don't." He got napped on the knuckles rather tartly over history. Then came Latin. That morning it was all adjectives, especially a loathsome adjective called acer, ascris, acre, small or piercing. It was that put him out. It came right at the end of lessons. That was the worst of it. As he was longing to be out of doors, he was always looking out of the window, watching the pigeons. He had to repeat Asher line by line in a sort of catechism. The governess. Hold on, I need to get these voices ready. The governess. What is sharp? K. Asa. The governess. Feminine. K. Acris. The governess. Neuter. K. Acre. The governess. Now the nominative. All genders. K. Acer. Acris. Acre. The governess. Meaning. K. Sharp. The governess. Or, what else can it mean? K. Piercing. The governess. Accusative. K. Acrum. Acris. Acre? Here the governess scowled rather, and would not say if he were right. Instead, she said, Genitive? But how was he to leap at the genitive when he could not tell if he was taking off point? The accusative were sound. If his taking off point, the accusative were sound. There. Besides, had it a genitive? Could you say of sharp? What would be the genitive? Could it be acre? Acre? Ac? Acre? That didn't sound right. What did sound right? Not quite acrum, acrum, acrum. Well, the governess said, what is the genitive? Acrostic, acrostic, acrostic. What? A crumpet, a crumpet, a crumpet. You're a very idle, impudent little boy, the governess said. You'll write it all out 5 times, and I shall tell your guardian, Sir Theopompus, when he comes. Now go and have your milk, but not your biscuit. You haven't deserved one. And mind you come to lunch with washed hands. The governess's Christian names were Sylvia and Daisy. Kay had read a poem about a Sylvia, and had decided that it was not swans who commended this one, but Mrs. Tattle and Mrs. Gossip. He loved daisies because the closer one looked at them, the more beautiful they seemed. Yet this daisy was like her a rhododendron. She was big, handsome, and with something of a flaunting manner, which turned into a flounce when she was put out. She left the schoolroom with something of a flounce after passing the sentence about the no biscuit with his milk. He had had his biscuits stopped before more than once. He used to go to the kitchen cupboard. Sorry, I skipped a line. He had excuse me. He had had his biscuits stopped before more than once. He had invented a dodge for making up for the loss of biscuit. He used to go to the kitchen cupboard where the raisins were kept, and get a handful of raisins instead. Ellen was his devoted friend, and Jane thought that raisins were very good for him. But this morning, alas, things had gone badly in the house, and Ellen and Jane were cross. When he put his hand into the blue paper bag for the raisins, Jane stopped him. Now, Master Kay, she said, you put down those raisins, or I shall tell your governess about you. You go taking those raisins, and then it's put down to me. You've got plenty of good plain food without going and stuffing yourself. That's how little boys get a stoppage. And I don't want you bothering about in my kitchen when I'm as busy as I am. I've put your milk in the dining room long ago. There was nothing for it but to go. In the dining room another trouble showed. There on the sideboard, with his head in the tumbler of milk, which was tilted so that he was lapping the last remnants of it, was Black Malkin, one of the 3 cats. Kay shooed him away, but 3/4 of the milk had gone, and Kay would not drink what was left, because the cat had breathed in it. And Kay had heard that a cat's breath always gave you consumption. I don't think that's true, but it is very smart of him not to drink from a jug of milk that a cat just drank from. I can tell you that. Julian 20, those darn kitties, yes indeed. He went into the garden without milk or biscuit. Before he could settle down to any game, he was called indoors to wash his hands, and then to put on a Sunday collar ready for Sir Theopompus. He loathed Sir Theopompus, a stout, red-faced man with eyes staring out of his head as though he were at the point of choking. The The worst of Sir Theopompus's coming was that there was always a lovely dinner, but no contentment therewith. Only the scowl of Sylvia Daisy if he did anything wrong. Get a little drink of water. Oh, goodness. My throat is very dry tonight. I don't know why. Presently Sir Theopompus arrived in his fluttery way, with his gold-rimmed spectacles, his umbrella with the gold band, and his gold watch and chain. The governess presented her reports, but mercifully never said anything about the Latin adjective. Sir Theopompus didn't say much to Kay, happily, but from time to time would ask some questions such as, "Are you enjoying your history? Got as far as the first Reform Bill yet? And what is your opinion of Lord Palmerston as a statesman, eh?" Then, after some more talk and another helping of goose, he would switch on to geography. "Know all about latitude and longitude, eh? What latitude are you in now, do you suppose?" Towards the end of dinner, when he was shiny with his lunch, Sir Theopompus asked, "And what are you going to be, my young man? Got any plans yet?" "I was rather hoping that I could be a jockey," Kay said, timidly. A look of displeasure came upon Miss Sylvia Daisy's face. "Not thinking of being a sailor, like your great-grandpapa?" Sir Theopompus said. "Do you know about your great-grandpapa?" "Yes, I know something," Kay said. "Who?" "Oh, and what do you know?" said the governess very sweetly. "He was a sea captain," Kay said, "and went a lot to the West Indies and Santa Barbara." "Yes," Sir Theopompus broke in, "and he took away the Santa Barbara treasure, worth about £1,000,000, as some think, and his crew mutinied, put him ashore, and ran away with it. Pretty pickings for a crew of seamen. Of course, some say," Sir Theopompus added as he rose from his chair, "some say that your great-grandpapa brought that treasure home with him and hid it somewhere. Have you come upon any treasure in your grubbings?" "No," Kay said. "Well, I'll tell you what I'll do," Sir Theopompus said. "If you'll find that treasure and tell me where it is, I'll go in honest halves with you." "But it wouldn't be an honest halves," Kay said, "because you'd have done none of the work, and all the treasure belongs to the Santa Barbara priests." "Oh, so that's the line you're going on," Sir Theopompus said. "Now you cut, for I've got to talk business here." Kay went out into the garden, and amused himself until tea time, wondering what the two could find to talk about, though he supposed that it was mostly about himself. Tea was very early, although lunch had been so late, because Sir Theopompus had to catch the 4:30. Tea with Sir Theopompus there was a dismal function in the drawing-room, with the tea set known as the Lowestoft, and the stiff rosewood chairs which Kay was to be sure not to scratch. "Well, have you found the treasure, eh?" Sir Theopompus asked. Kay said that he had not. "It seems to me," Sir Theopompus said, "that you're making this young man something of a mooney. When I was a young fellow, by George, the thought of treasure would have set me going, I know. Don't you want to find it, eh?" "Everybody says that it was never here, sir," Kay said. "Oh, no," Sir Theopompus answered, "but a good many say it was here, and is here somewhere. Those West India merchants were a pretty odd lot of fellows, if you ask me. A lot of piracy and slaving going on there. I dare say your great-grandpapa was no better than his time, and £1,000,000 is a big temptation in the path of a man who's been just a merchant skipper.
Sir, he was a very good man,
Kay said.
his portrait is in the schoolroom.
Well, he was a very good man, was he? Sir Theopompus said. He didn't bring back the treasure that he was trusted with. We know what to call men of that stamp in the city, by George. The day had been full of contrary. Now something in the day, and in Sir Theopompus's combined to Kay. Now something in the day, and in Sir Theopompus combined to Kay's ruin. Well, I don't care. Oh, sorry, that's wrong character.
Well, I don't care,
he said.
You oughtn't, you oughtn't, you aren't to condemn a man who isn't here to answer.
By George, Sir Theopompus said, we shall have to put you into Parliament. He went rather turkey-cocky about the gills, snorted, and said that he had to catch his train. When the wheels of the fly had scrunched along the gravel out of the gate, the governess turned upon him.
What a very impotent little boy you are, Kay,
she said,
not only to me this morning, but to your kind guardian, who has come here specially and solely to see how you are getting on. It would have done you good if he had boxed your ears soundly and sent you packing.
Firefly, sorry I'm late. We just left Lawnwood Gardens. Oh, that's fine. Thank you for coming, Firefly. We're just reading The Midnight Folk, and poor Kay Harker has to defend his poor deceased great-grandpapa from being accused of piracy. Ah.
I don't care,
Kay said.
He ought to have said that about great-grandpapa Harker, because it isn't true. You are a wicked little boy, Kay,
the governess said.
You will go straight to bed this minute, without your bread and milk.
The little boy went upstairs to his room, in the old part of the house. There were oak beams in the ceiling. The floor was all oak plank. The bed was big and old, valanced to the floor, and topped by a canopy. Kay was very much afraid of it at going to bedtime, because so many tigers could get underneath it to wait till he was asleep. But tonight he did not mind, because it was still only sunset. He had 2 windows in his room. One looked out on a garden, where Nibbins, the black cat, was watching some birds. The other looked out over a field, where there was a sheep trough. He did not like the look of the trough in the long grass, because it looked so like a puma, with its ears cocked. Beyond the field he could see the stable, where Benjamin, the highwayman, had once lived. You see? Now, in his room there were 2 doors, leading to different passages, which was terrible after dark because of footsteps. On the wall were 2 colored prints, the meat and full cry, one on each side of the fireplace. Over the wash-hand stand, as it was called, were 2 old pistols wired to nails. They were called Great-Grandpapa Harker's pistols, and Kay was to be sure never to touch them, because they might go off. Then, on the other side of the room, there was the dressing table, valanced to the floor, which made a very good secret room, where nobody ever looked for you. In the corner near this, on a shelf on the wall, stood an old model of a ship, which Kay was never to touch, because boys are so destructive. This was the model of Great-Grandpapa Harker's ship, the Plunderer, which had disappeared with the missing treasure so long before. A very terrible thing about the fireplace was the stone hearth.
As big as 3 men could lift,
Jane said. Ellen said that a stone like that was a sure sign that somebody had been murdered and buried there, and that if Kay wasn't a good boy, he would come out and warn him. Cook said once
she had seen him come out,
and
he was all in black,
which was a sure sign.
And he wanted to speak,
she said,
only it wasn't his time.
That night the rooks were very noisy at their going to roost. The peacocks were screaming, and the brook at the end of the garden could be heard.
It is going to rain.
Nah, wrong accent.
It is going to rain,
Kay thought. He lingered over his undressing because he hoped that Ellen or Jane would smuggle him some bread and milk when the governess went to supper. But it was Ellen's evening alone, when she always did her ironing, and Jane was out. By and by, the sun went down behind the wooded camp, known as King Arthur's Round Table, where King Arthur was supposed to ride at full moon. This setting, by the way, they just mentioned, becomes much more important in the second book. When the sun had gone, all the world glowed for a while. But it was not wise to wait till the glow had gone, because so soon the dusk began, when the owls would come, and the footsteps would begin, and the tigers would stir under the bed and put out their paws, and the scratchings would scrape under the floor. He knew that he had not been good, and that he might come out and warn him. He got into the bed with a leap, because then you dodged the paws. He got well under the clothes for a minute to make sure that he was not pursued. Luckily, none of the tigers had heard him. The worst of it was that tigers look out for wicked little boys. When Kay came from under the bedclothes, he could not be sure that there was not a tiger laying in the canopy above him. It was sagged down, just as though a tiger were there. If it were to give way, the tiger would fall right on top of him, or very likely it was not a tiger, but a python, for that is what pythons do. I'm going to pause here, I really like the way Maisefield's is writing here, in that we get a window into Kay's little child mindset. The idea of tigers are under the bed, because of course they are. And there's no doubt that they're not there. Never once does Kay think, oh, this is just my imagination. No, he is absolutely certain there are tigers there, and he knows it. It's like this little magical world that he's created, and it is absolutely the truth to him. I love that. It's very clever. Now it became darker, so that he could see a few stars. Footsteps passed in the house, sometimes close to his door, so that gleams of candlelight crossed the ceiling. Very strange creakings sounded in the house. There were scutterings to and fro, and scraping scratchings. By and by he heard the governess, who had finished her supper, come to the room beneath him, the library, as she usually did in the evenings. He was cross for her for stopping his bread and milk, but glad she was there. She opened the piano and began to play. Usually she played things without any tune, which he said he couldn't understand yet because they were classical. This night, she played something that had a sort of tune, and then began to sing to it in a very beautiful voice, so that he was wrapped away at once into joy. There were not any more tigers nor pythons, only a mouse gnawing in the wainscot. Or was it someone playing on a guitar and humming some song about treasure? Let me get a drink before I do this next part because there's more voices. Firefly, where does this take place? This takes place in Britain. We don't know the exact location, somewhere in the countryside. Um, if you know the second book, you know the name of the house is called Seekings, which is where Kay Harker lives. And this takes place in 1927, which is when it was written. Excuse me. After a time, he did not think it was a guitar, but a voice calling to him.
Kay! Kay, wake up!
Waking up, he rubbed his eyes. It was broad daylight, but no one was there. Someone was scraping and calling inside the wainscot, just below where the pistols hung. There was something odd about the daylight. It was brighter than usual. All things looked more real than usual.
Can't you open the door, Kay?
The voice asked. There never had been a door there. But now that Kay looked, there was a little door, all studded with knops of iron. Just as he got down to it, it opened towards him. There was Nibbins, the black cat.
Come along, Kay,
Nibbins said.
we can just do it while you're at the banquet, but don't make more noise than you must.
Kay peeped through the door. It opened from a little narrow passage in the thickness of the wall.
Where does it lead to?
He asked.
Come and see,
Nibbins said. Kay slipped on his slippers and followed Nibbins into the little passage. Nibbins closed the door behind him and bolted it.
I'll lead the way,
he said.
Mind the stairs, there's a bit worn, for the smugglers used to use these passages. But there's lots of light. Take my paw as we go up.
Here's an interesting thing. How big is Nibbins now? I mean, he's asking Kay to take his paw as he's walking, and he just closed the door and bolted it with his paws. It's a little bit strange, isn't it? They went up some stairs in the thickness of the wall. Then a panel slid up in front of them, and they came out onto the top landing. Nibbins closed the panel behind them. It was dark night there on the landing, except for a little moonlight. Wait, it was daylight and now it's night? Weird. The house was very still, but looking down over the banisters into the hall, Kay thought that he saw a shadow, wearing a ruff and a long sword, standing in the moonlight. The cuckoo clock in the nursery struck 12.
All the house is sound asleep,
Nibbins said.
Jane and Ellen are in there, in those 2 rooms. They little know of what goes on among us midnight folk.
We have a title there, my dear scholars.
They little know what goes on among us midnight folk. Give us a hand with this ring belt, will ya?
The oak planks of the floor In the oak planks of the floor there was a trap door, which Kay had never seen before. Together they pulled it up. Beneath was a ladder, leading down into a passage brightly lit like the others.
Close the trap after you,
Nibbins said as he went down. They went along a passage into a little room, all hung with swords and banners.
This is the guard room,
Nibbins said.
Some of the swords are still here. The guards went away a long time ago. Least said, soonest mended. It's not for me to blame anybody. There are their names cut on the wall.
Kay read some of the names. Robin Pointnose, Eduardo da Vinci, Salado da Vinci, Bruno Brie, Snowball, G.L. Brown Bear, Dog, P-Dog, Jack, Peterkin, James, Squirrel, Petter Horse, Tom, John, Linda, Peter Gillen, W.M. Brown, Ernest, Jemima, Maria, Susan, Peter. Alas, Kay knew those names only too well. They were the names of his beloved companions of old, before there had been any governesses or Sir Theopompus. They had been his toys, of bears, dogs, rabbits, cats, horses, and boys. They had all been packed away long ago, when the governess came, because as he had heard her tell Ellen,
They will only remind him of the past.
they were locked up somewhere, he thought, yet he often feared that they had been given away to other children, who would not know them, or be kind to them.
Why do you call them the guards, Nibs?
He asked.
Why? Because they were the guards,
Nibbins said.
I told them they ought not to go, but Edward said that he had got a clue and had to follow it up. What had he got? What had he got a clue to?
Kay asked.
The Harker treasure,
He said.
I begged him to leave half the guards, but he said, no, I'll only be away a week or two. So away they went with the horse and cart, the big tent that takes to pieces, and all the hammocks and guns. Edward had his sword, the cocked hat, the coat with the piping, and his striped trousers, so you could see that he thought it was important. But as to his being away only a week, he has been away a year or more, and not a word has come from any of them.
I'm afraid they're all dead, Kay said. I wish they weren't.
Things have gone to rack and ruin without them,
Nibbins said.
What with witchcraft and that. Of course I'm only a cat, but I've got eyes, and a cat can look at a king. Still, Lee said soonest mended. Now come along, this way, down these steps. Now, do you see these these holes? They are cut in the portraits on the walls of one of the rooms. You can look down if you like.
Kay looked down through the eye holes of Grandmamma Harker's portrait into the drawing room, which was shuttered dark, except for some moonlight coming from the upper panes. This moonlight fell upon the table, where the red and white ivory chessmen were playing chess by themselves. They had come out of the box and ranged themselves. The king called out the moves, but generally they asked the queens first. The pieces and pawns which had been taken stood beside the board, giving cheers for their own sides and uttering little cries of warning.
Well played, Red. Now, White Knight, why don't you take him? Oh, your majesty, look out for the bishop. Oh, well played, your grace, well played indeed. They'll be mate in 3 moves, if you do that, Red. Will it really? Yes, my dear, I suppose it will. I'd better not do it then. What would you suggest?
Etc. While Kay was watching, Nibbins put a paw on his arm.
Don't speak, he said. Mrs. Pouncer is going to sing. Come along quietly. You'll enjoy this.
While Kay was I read that already. He led Kay along a narrow corridor to another passage, where there were more eyelet holes. Kay looked through the eyes of great-grandmama Siskin's portrait into the dining room. But what did he see? Let me take another drink. We'll find out. There were 7 old witches in tall black hats and long scarlet cloaks sitting round the table at a very good supper. The cold goose and chine which had been hot and chine which had been hot at midday dinner, and the plum cake which had been new for tea. They were very piggy in their eating, picking the bones with their fingers, etc., and they had almost finished the marsala. The old witch who sat at the head of the table tapped with her crooked-headed stick and removed her tall pointed hat. She had a hooky nose and chin and very bright eyes.
"Dear Pouncer is going to sing to us,"
Another witch said.
"Hear, hear!"
The other witches said.
"Dear Pouncer, sing!" "But you must join in the chorus, sisters. Shall it be the old song, dear Nightshade?" "Yes, yes, the old song."
Mrs. Pouncer cleared her throat and began. Now I gotta sing, my dear scholars. Do you want me to sing this? Or just read it? Which would you prefer, a singing version or a reading? You lean toward a yes. Oh, that's not an answer! Oh, you want me to sing it? Oh my goodness. Let me hydrate even more. Oh. And we shall see how good I can sing in this. Mrs. Pouncer cleared her throat and began.
"When the midnight strikes in the belfry dark, and the white goose quakes at the fox's bark, we saddle the horse that is hailless, oatless, hoofless and pranceless, kickless and coatless. We canter off for a midnight prowl. Chorus, dear sisters. Woo hoo hoo, says the hooked ear owl."
All the witches put back their heads to sing the chorus.
"Woo hoo hoo," says the hooked ear owl.
It seemed to Kay that they were looking straight at him. Nibbin's eyes gleamed with joy.
"I can't resist the song,"
he said.
"I never could. It was this song, really, that got me into this way of life." "But I don't know what it means. What is the horse that is hailless?"
"Aha!" Nibbin said.
"Well, we've time while they're at this song. It has 9 times 9 verses, but you ought to stay for some more woo-hoos. Doesn't it give you the feel of the moon in the treetops? Woo-hoo-hoo, says the hooked ear owl. Come along, quietly."
Nibbins led the way up some more stairs, till he came to an open door, through which Kay saw the stars.
"Why, this is the roof,"
he said. Firefly, yay, that was fun. Yes, I have to make up the tunes because, of course, we don't know what the tunes are. He saw how strange the roof was, close to, like this, with the twisted black chimneys standing guard with their cowls still spinning. He seemed very far from the ground.
"This is what they mean," Nibbins said. "Just open that middle chimney, will you?" "But it is a chimney. It won't open." "No, it isn't. There's a bobbin on it. Pull that. It's their stable."
Kay scrambled up to the middle chimney of the 3 nearest to him. Sure enough, there was a bobbin on it. He pulled it. The latch came up. The chimney opened like a door. There inside was a cupboard, in which stood 1 besom, 1 stable broom, 1 straw broom, 1 broom, and 3 kitchen brooms, each with a red headstall marked with magic.
Take the besom and the broom, Nibbins said, and pitch the others over the gutter.
Oh, Private Maverick wasn't keeping track, but hey, 15 streams in a row. Oh my goodness. That's marvelous, Maverick. Firefly, and hydrate if you didn't after signing. You mean the song? Yeah, I need to hydrate again. I don't know why, but my throat is so dry tonight. It's really odd. Kay pitched the 5 over the gutter. They whinnied as they fell into the garden path, but nobody seemed to notice.
Now, let us mount and ride, Nibbins said, but first we'll shut the door.
He was going to shut the door into the house when the noise of the song suddenly became much louder.
Somebody at the banquet said, "Hush!" Suddenly,
the singing stopped. The witches were holding their door open, listening.
"They've heard us," Nibbins said. "Mount, Kay, and ride. Mount, catch him by the bridle, and say Sessa, and point him where you want to go. Watch me."
Nibbins mounted the besom, Kay the broom. Just as he was mounted, he heard the sharp voice of Mrs. Pouncer calling from the foot of the stairs.
"Night glider Till, are ill things well?"
Kay saw the besom toss up its head. It began to say,
"Save, mistress, save, from white thief and black knave."
But before he could finish, both Nibbins and Kay said Sessa and pointed their horses towards the wood. Kay heard the witches clattering up the stairs on their high-heeled shoes. Looking back, he saw them all clustered on the roof, shaking their fists and sticks. But already they were far away, for the 2 broom horses were rushing through the air so fast that soon the house was out of sight. As they went over the elm boughs, they came so close to the top twigs that some young rooks woke in the rookery and cried "Caw!" at them. It was merry to be so high in the air. Kay could see the village, with hardly a light in it, and the flashing of the brook where it went over the fall. Near the pond, many little lights were twinkling. Kay wondered what they could be. A couple of white owls drifted up alongside Kay like moths. He could see their burning yellow eyes.
"We'll race you to the upper wood," they said.
"All right," Kay said. "Come up, horse." The brooms were much faster than the owls. Soon they were well ahead.
"You keep clear of Wicked Hill,"
the owls cried. They said something more, but the brooms were too far in front for the riders to hear.
"We'll land here if you don't mind," Nibbins said. "I'd like to speak with a friend, if he's anywhere about. Point his head down to the quarry there."
When they had landed in the quarry, they tied the brooms to 2 spindle trees.
"It must be spindle trees," Nibbins said.
The quarry was bright in the moonlight, and much overgrown with hazels and gorse.
"What is Wicked Hill?" Kay asked, "that we ought to keep clear of?" "They told us to keep clear of it, did they?" Nibbins said. "That shows that there's something on. However, this is where my friend lives, if he's not on his rounds."
He led the way toward the quarry end, where there was much tumbled stone worn into a track by feet. A warm, strong scent was blowing about the place, more like a taste than a smell. The ground was white with little bones. Something that looked like washing hung about the gorse bushes. It was not washing, though. It was rabbit skins hung up to dry. Someone with a most unpleasant voice was doing something with the rabbit skins, and singing as he worked. He was either folding the dry ones or hanging more fresh. His song was not a nice one. Oh my goodness, more singing. I gotta hydrate again. Let me figure out a voice quickly for this one. Okay.
I crept out of covert, and what did I see? Ow, 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 diddle, ow. But several fat bunnies each waiting for me, with a poacher's noosey. Catch the fat goosey. Ho, says roar, come bite 'em. Oh, pretty bunnies, let's come for a stroll. Oh, no, no, you're a fox. A fox, pretty dears, can't you see I'm a mole, with a weaselly stouty snap at his throaty ho, says welcome bite 'em. Let's dance one by one, arm in arm, my dear friends. Oh, certainly, sir, if you please. So 7 fat bunnies had 7 sweet ends. Hey for a heddle, snug in my dennel. Ho, says welcome bite 'em.
The song stopped suddenly. Kay heard no sound of footsteps, but suddenly two very bright green eyes were shining at him above some glittering teeth. Yulian20, how is your voice? My voice is doing okay for now. I'm kind of running low on hydration, though. This is very difficult on my throat. It's all right, Bite 'em, old boy, Nibbins said. It's only Nibs. This is my friend Kay. Mr. Kay, Mr. Lightfoot. Mr. Rollicum, Bite'em, Lightfoot.
Oh, it's you, Nibs. Pleased to meet you, Mr. K.
Sorry about that. Ovid just delivered a little more hydration for me, my dear scholars. He is so kind and useful. I'll go back from the start of his line.
Oh, it's you, Nibs. Pleased to meet you, Mr. K. Come in, won't you? Sorry I didn't recognize you at once. This way.
He led the way to what looked like the mouth of a cave in the quarry face.
It'll be dark for you,
he said to Kay.
You'll find some glowworms on the shelf there, if you want a light.
Kay took a glowworm from the shelf. By the light of this, he was able to see where he was going. The two others went down the passage in front of him. It was a rough, dark, narrow passage, with many twists in it. Everywhere there was this strong, rich scent, so like a taste. There were many rabbit skins about, as well as feathers. Mr. Bartum deals in game, Nibbins said. I have to consult him about some rabbiting. Mr. Bidem led them into his study, which was also his bedroom and larder.
Bachelor's quarters, he said. A bit rough and ready, but then I'm only here in the winter, really. Would you care to pick a wing or anything? No? I've got some nice fowl, cold, and there's a bit of duck under the floor there. No? Well, what do you want with me, Nibs?
About our rabbiting tomorrow night, Bartum. Of course you can speak freely before Mr. Kay. I rather think my cousin Black Malkin has betrayed us to the keeper. I happened to see him come from the keeper's cottage. I was up in a tree among some ivy. He came out licking his lips, for he'd been having some milk. He didn't see me, he passed just underneath me, but I heard him chuckle to himself and say, Keeper will get the lot of them. You see, Kay, my two cousins, Black Malkin and Grey Malkin, and myself, have been in this midnight business together for quite a long time. Well, lately we've been helping Bartum in the game industry on quiet nights, after new moon, and so on. And we had planned a big hunt for tomorrow, out Cornycop Spinnery way. A really big hunt. Ourselves, Bartum, and some of his relatives. Now, Black Malcolm has not been dependable for a long time. This magic business is very bad for a fellow, and he is in it deeply, with a very bad set, all the Pouncer Seven. You mark my words, he has been put up by the Seven to betray us to the keeper. When he had gone, I crept down from my tree, got into the keeper's cottage, and upstairs under the bed. Presently keeper came in with those nasty dogs of his, and put his gun on that rack. I've got some news for you, my dear, his wife said. Here's Black Malcolm just come in to say there's a big rabbit drive arranged for Friday night in the spinnery. That bottom lot and his cousins are in it. I'll rabbit 'em, keeper said. You know his coarse red way. I'll rabbit 'em. Yes, my dear, his wife said. Black Malcolm said you'd get the lot of 'em. Of course, after what he told me, I gave him some milk and that bit of sardine that there was. Quite right, keeper said. If I get the lot of him, he shall have more than milk and sardines. He shall have Longtail's wing. Oh, hush, my dear, his wife said. Somebody might hear you. Tut, nobody can hear me, keeper said, blowing out his big lips. But I'll rabbit 'em. Let 'em come on Friday. I'll ask no better. Then he went out and began oiling his gun. I could hear him singing. I'll get him oil for Friday, so it shall be there Day, and Saturday shall be Batter Day, and Sunday Hot Rabbit Pie Day. There's a lot of singing in this book. I had to wait in the room for hours, because his nasty dogs were in the room below. But at last I could stand it no longer. I made a dart for the chimney, and was over the roof and into the pines before the dogs were upstairs. I heard keeper ask, "What's the matter with the dogs?" And his wife said, "It sounded like a yon jackdaw got down the chimney again." "I'll jackdaw them jackdaws one of these days," he said, "and if they keep on jackdawing me." That's that, she said. So that was that, and here I am. And after that, I gotta hydrate. Because that is a lot of words.
Huh!
Bite'em said.
So that's that for tomorrow's hunt. Now what can we do for Black Malcolm, of all the traitors I ever did hear of? But we'll pretend we're going up to the last. Keeper and the beaters will all be at Quinox waiting for us, and we'll send Black Malcolm there. But we ourselves will go off and draw a brandy rideway. They're pretty toothy in the rabbits there, especially the South Warren. And Keeper and Beaters will wait all night for us at Quinox. And when they learn they've been at brandy, they'll pretty well have it out of Black Malcolm for misleading them. They'll toss him in a game bag and serve him right.
"I'll say you have got a brain, Bite'em," Nibbin said. "I knew you'd have a plan at once. That's the advantage of working with you. Never at a loss. I never saw such a fellow."
A fellow has need to be never at a loss,
Bite'em said.
The huntsmen are bad enough in their red coats, but at least you do expect a keeper to stand your friend.
"If you wouldn't mind just moving to the door, Kay," Nibbin said, "Bite'em and I could plan out our hunt a bit, using the floor as a map." Kay moved to the door. He watched them as they put rabbit skins and feathers on the ground to mark places in the wood. He listened to them for a few minutes. Who's talking right now? Oh, okay. They don't actually say who's talking. This hen's head is a big U. That rabbit skin is the boggy patch. You know the place. Then here's where we got the partridge chicks. I'll put this pheasant's tail to mark the end of the South Warren. Hobbs Farrell'll join in here, and Jill will come if we want her. And then you will steal up here, and I'll steal up there. Yes, and then Grey Malkin is awfully good at a drop pounce. Then we'll all go over the down to North Warren. Excuse me. Kay grew weary of all this talk, because he had never been to Brandy Ridewood. He strolled quietly along the passage towards its mouth in the quarry face. He put back the glowworm on the ledge and peeped out of the entrance. He drew back at once, because there in the quarry, not far from the cave, was a man at work among the stones. He was kneeling in a patch of shadow, but his face came up into the moonlight from time to time. Kay saw from his velveteen coat that it was the keeper.
What on earth is he doing?
Kay wondered. Presently the keeper stood up to stretch his back. He was wearing gloves. He drew from a sack a big iron snap trap, which he opened and set him on the stones in the middle of the path leading to Bitem's earth. When it was set, he very cleverly and cautiously strewed it over with moss, dead grass, leaves, and earth.
That will cut your life.
Gotta do a voice for the keeper.
That will catch your light feet, Mr. Lightfoot, he said. And then with my good gun I'll put an end to your sniping of my rabbits. Many a young hunter will give a pound for that mask of yourn, and your brush will be a cobweb cleaner before you're a week older. I'll get up my tree, my master, and watch till you walk click into it. You'll be coming home within an hour, I know your ways.
Kay saw him move into the wood above the quarry, where he began to climb a tree. As soon as he was climbing, Kay hurried back to tell the others what he had seen.
A trap? Bitem said. And keep on watching from a tree? I am very much obliged to you, Mr. Kay. I must be gone from here by the secret door. I'll move off to my place Wicked Hill way.
There's something on that Wicked Hill, the owl said. Niven said, Do you think it would be safe?
A lot safer than this,
Bitem said. Yes, for you, Niven said. But I meant for us.
They don't harm anyone as long as they keep outside the magic circle.
Whoa, magic circle? Oh my goodness. All sorts of things are happening in this story. I'd love to go just to look on, Niven said. It's probably a big magic night, Kay, when they have a bonfire. And oh, I do love to see them at magic. It's terrifying, but I can't resist it.
Well, come along,
Bitem said. We can steal round to our horses and give you a lift, Bitem. The fox led the way out of his study into a narrow passage, where Kay had to crawl on hands and knees. This led into a biggish room from which several passages branched. Water was dripping in one of them.
Very convenient in here,
Bitem said.
Lots of ways out and plenty of water, but this is the way we'll take tonight.
In a few minutes they scrambled out among some gorse roots, at least 100 yards from the keeper, near the spindle trees where the brooms were tethered. You mount with me, Bitem, Niven said, and you, Kay, just follow us. There are spindles where we can tether, lots of them. In a moment the brooms were sweeping through the air over the treetops. Kay saw a few white houses here and there below him, and many gleaming ponds and brooks. Far ahead among the hills was the glow of a bonfire. Soon they could see people dancing round it. Kay came to ground with Nivens and Bitem beside a spinney on the hill. There were many spindle bushes in the spinney, but to many of them brooms were already tethered.
I'll be off to my place,
Bitem said.
Over there among the old ones. You'll find the night folk up at the top. Good night.
Wicked Hill was a big round lump with a hollow top. The lower slopes grew bracken and bramble, but near the top nothing grew except a short-bladed grass. The stump of an old gibbet stood at one end of it. An earthwork with two gates ringed the top of the hill. On the top of this earthwork the magic circle was burning in a narrow line of blue fire, which was being fed by little black cats who walked round the ring, dropping herbs on it. "That used to be my job when I did this kind of thing," Nivens whispered. The bonfire, which had now sunk to a glow, was in the midst of the circle. The people who had danced about it were now drawn together in a group. They were listening to a wizard in a long scarlet gown, who seemed to be their king or chief. "That's Abner Brown," Nivens whispered. "He's always the head of these big parties."
"Hush," Kay said. "Let's hear what he's saying."
Another new voice. "So, my brothers and sisters," Abner was saying, "we have had our evening's frolic. Now let us come to our evening's business. The great task before us is to find the Harker treasure." Here there were cries of "Hear, hear!" "We all know what that was. It was the treasure of the great South American Cathedral of Santa Barbara. It was a barge load of gold and silver and precious stones, wrought and unwrought, but worth, so the records prove, at least £1,700,000. There are 7 times 7 of us. If we find it, the share of each one of us will be some £35,000. I ask you, is it worth trying to find?" There were loud cries of "Yes." "You say yes, and you may mean yes, but would you all work for yes?" There were shouts of "Yes" to the death. "Very well then," he said. "I am glad that we are all resolved. We will now break up our party. Let all the sevens leave the hill except the Pouncer 7. When most of the party had gone, Kay saw that Mrs. Pouncer, Sister Nightshade, and the rest of the 7 drew near to Abner. "Sister Pouncer," Abner said, "why are you so vexed?"
"Enemies are at work," she said. "They took my broom and Nightshade's broom, so we had to walk."
"Oh, do not be vexed, my Pouncer," Abner said, "because I am far from vexed. I have discovered something very important about the treasure."
"Oh, what, dear Abner?"
"You are quite wrong about it. It is not in the Harker home, but somewhere near here." At this there came cries of
"No, it cannot be! How can it be? Where do you suppose it is? Why is it not in the Harker house? Where is it?"
"We will find out that presently," he said, "of where it is. Listen to what I have to say of its whereabouts it is." The 7 drew near, intently listening. "You know," Abner went on, "that when I was little, I helped my father and grandfather, both of them Abner Browns like myself, to look for the treasure. I might say I was at this quest from birth." Here there were remarks of "Hear, hear!" "As you know, my grandfather once had the treasure, but lost it. For more than 20 years he and my father dug for it where they thought it would be. One of my earliest recollections is of helping them to dig for it in a hot country of very red mud. Then my grandpop disappeared, and within a week my pop died of the yellow fever. I had the harsh world to wrestle with before I could take up the quest. But I took it up just 30 years after those two laid it down. It wasn't easy to pick up the threads. At last I went down to that place in the red mud to make inquiries. The yellow fever had killed most everyone who had lived there when my pop and grandpop dug there. But I met an old man who knew just why my grandpop gave up digging and disappeared. He gave up digging because someone found the treasure and carried it off to sea. He disappeared so as to settle matters with that finder. The finder was an Englishman named Benito Trigger. That is not much to go upon, is it? 35 years ago, an Englishman gets to sea with the stuff 3,000 miles away and disappears. My grandpop goes after him and disappears. At first, I thought excuse me. At first, I thought that this Benito Trigger might be Captain Harker himself, for as we know, he lived for many years in quest of the treasure.
I pretended to, so as to lull suspicion while he lived on it,
Mrs. Pouncer said under her breath. But it was not Captain Harker, Abner continued. For when I came here to make inquiries, I found that Captain Harker was at that time upon his deathbed. I need not tell you how interesting it was to see the very house in which old Captain Harker lived, and to see his tomb, and to stand within just a few feet of those bones, which, when they were alive, had started all this treasure hunt. For the moment I ruled him out. You didn't get the treasure, brother, I said. You were in your tomb before it could have reached England, if it ever did reach England.
It was in his secret den before he ever sickened,
Mrs. Pouncer muttered.
Of course he had it all the time.
But, Abner continued, I fell right plumb in love with this green countryside, so full of real old buildings. So I just didn't rest till I'd taken Russell's Dean, that Queen Anne mansion in the oak woods, where tradition says the Druids once practiced them rites. There, as you know, we have been able to establish our magic circle for the quest of the treasure, upon the lines of the ancient knowledge. Oh my goodness, it's very hard to do this voice. If you're wondering, I'm actually trying to mimic the voice in this part from the original, what was it? The Box of Delights, and it's a very unusual voice with a lot of different emphasis on the words, so it's very hard for me to match it. But I am trying. And then I read birds that come out of the wilderness with knowledge. One of them came to me this spring, just after I was settled in Russell's Dean. He led me to visit a certain church, not many miles from here. And what did I find there? Here some of the seven said,
The treasure, some of the candlesticks, the church vessels in use again.
No, none of those things, he answered. I found the tomb of my long-lost grandpop, Abner Brown. He had been drowned in the great flood here in February 1850, February Fildike, as you call it. Was not that wonderful? I have now raked out something of his end. He was last seen alive at the Condicut Inn, the Ring of Bells, on the last night of January 1850. He was then heard quarrelling. With whom? With Sir Piney Trigger, a rich Honduras merchant who had just returned from 2 years' absence in the West. That Piney Trigger was the Trigger who had found the treasure and carried it off to sea. My grandpop had run him down.
That night after their quarrel, both my grandpop and Sir Piney disappeared. What happened, do you suppose? Many asked that at the time. I answer it. I say that Sir Piney had the treasure here, that my grandpop had discovered so much and asked for a share. They quarrel. I say that Sir Piney flung my grandpop into the flood and then fled the country, left the treasure, and never dared come back for it because of blood guiltness. The case is reported in the Condecut Remembrance for February 1850. They knew nothing of any treasure, of course, only inquired into the disappearance. The coroner's jury supposed him to have been washed out to sea by the great flood. Now, Sir Piney was a well-known sportsman mixed up in many shady matters. His daughter is still alive. I have seen her. There is no getting anything out of her. What I have tried to find out, what brought me to Condecut that night, in the coroner's notes I found this, that it was supposed that he had come to look after a big barge of his, which had come up the river some days before. It was a sea-going barge, fitted like a yacht. He had been in her in the west. I say that he brought the treasure in her. He hid it somewhere not far from Condecut, and had come to see to it, or to remove it when my grandpop interfered. Excuse me, I feel like I'm gonna sneeze. Oh my goodness. Oh. Here, as Amber paused, as though for applause, Sister Nightshade asked,
May he not have taken all the treasure away in the barge when he took himself away?
No, Amber said, because the barge, dead empty, had been washed ashore and stove in the floods 2 days before he disappeared. No, my sweet Seven, depend upon it. The treasure is near here, and somewhere here, probably near the river, we'll find it. Here there was a sensation among the company. All were much impressed and excited. Sister Pouncer said,
Was there ever such a mind, Lazar, Abner, like crystal from the spring?
but after saying this she moved nearer to Kay and muttered,
This, this is pure surmise. You have a bee in your bonnet, my good sir. I too have my views of where the treasure is, and we shall see who is right. Magic is a sure guide than a grand pop or a little pop. For all your tingo and tango, Sister Pouncer holds the silken claw.
ooh, we got a little treachery in here. And now, my dear Seven, Abner continued, we will have one short dance more, and then away, for the stars are dim and the cocks are stirring on their perches. Join hands and dance. A strange music began from somewhere in the air. The witches and wizards at once swept into a dance. Nibbins was very uneasy. I can't keep out of a dance like this, he said. Oh, it goes right through my marrow, and then in a minute they will all join hands and swing round and round and round till they see all sorts of things.
You come away,
Kay said, pulling him down the hill.
You always were one for getting into scrapes. Let's get back home before they all come hurrying for their horses. If Mrs. Pouncer catches us at the spindle trees, we shall be in a mess.
He made Nibbins run, keeping one hand on the scruff of his neck all the way, lest the sound of the dance should prove too exciting. In a few minutes they were high in the air again, upon their horses, sailing far from the hill. It's just as well we started when we did,
Niven said, "for there's the dawn beginning." Sure enough, the sky behind them was showing color. The two horses began to droop down towards the ground. Presently they were dragging along the ground, and at last they collapsed. We left it till too late," Niven said. "However, we're almost at home. Come along, the gate's locked, but we can get over the wall by the ivy." Another little drink of water. Mm. I'll say it's very surreal reading a book without any chapter breaks. Because it flows, but it flows in such a strange way. They left their horses in the road, scrambling up the ivy, over the wall, and then along behind the Laurustans, Laurustinus, till they were near the house. "This is the place," Niven said. They were within 30 yards of the house, in a thick shrubbery, but Nivens must have touched a spring, for the ground gave way beneath them, and down they went into a secret passage. In another minute, Nivens was gone, and Kay was in his own room.
What a night I have.
Gotta get the voice right. Kay's voice is hard to do. Maybe I'll just do my own voice for this.
What a night I have had,
he thought. His slippers were muddy from the soil in the garden.
I shall catch it,
he thought. The cuckoo clock struck 5. The room was quite light. He popped into bed at once. He did not stay long awake, you may be sure. Just before he fell asleep, however, he heard a curious noise on the wall of the house, not far away, as though the jasmine had broken away and were scraping as the wind blew it.
I suppose it's the jasmine, he muttered drowsily, but it may be Ellen up already, sweeping the stairs.
When he came downstairs to breakfast, the governess was not down. She entered just as he was at the sideboard, helping herself to pork pie. She looked a little cross, as though she had not slept very well.
You know, she said, that you're never allowed to help yourself to pork pie. It's very bilious, rich food, and then you won't be able to do your French. You must have an egg, like any other boy. And you don't mean to say, Kay, after all the many times I've spoken to you, that you've been in the garden again in your slippers, and on the beds too, and then you wonder if you catch your death of cold. But I haven't caught a cold, he said. Don't answer me back, sir, she said. You're a very naughty, disobedient little boy, and I have a very good mind not to let you have an egg. I wouldn't let you have an egg, only I had to stop your supper last night. Take off one of your slippers and let me feel it. Come here. Kay went up rather gingerly, having been caught in this way more than once. He took off one slipper and tendered it for inspection. Just as I thought, she said. The damp has come right through the lining, and that's the way your stockings get worn out. In a very pouncing way, she spanked at his knuckles with the slipper. He had expected a blow of the sort, and by drawing his hand swiftly aside, the slipper struck the spoons on the table and made them dance. Now, you naughty boy, put that slipper on, and you'll learn the whole of Pauvre before you go out this morning. What were you muttering under your breath, Kay? I was just wondering if this was a duck egg or a hen egg. Use the subjective and the genitive, she said. Were a duck's egg, not was a duck egg. And it's hen's egg. Duck's eggs are a great deal too rich. At any other time, Kay would have boasted that it was a double yoker, but refrained, thinking that this would probably lead to confiscation,
as too much for a young stomach. He ate his egg, but his mind was intent upon many other things. I'm going to stop at this point. I think this is a good stopping point in the book. Oh my goodness. Oh, again, it's very hard to read a book that doesn't have chapter breaks. Um, oh, hello there, Densul. Welcome. I just ended the reading for the night. Oh my goodness. Um, it's very hard to read a book without chapter breaks. It feels odd because you have to look for moments in which to stop. And it's not always easy to find that. I'm stopping at this moment because another character starts speaking, and I thought that would be a good point in which to stop. Julian 20, great job reading all those voices. It's difficult. It's very difficult. Like I said, Abner Brown's voice I had a pretty good idea for. Pouncer's, I wanted to mimic something from um, the Box of Lights, but I can't quite get the voice, of course. I have my limits. Pouncer in the Box of Delights, she is in that one as well, is played by Patricia Quill, who has a very, very distinctive voice, let's be honest. So I was in no hope of trying to mimic that voice. Oh my goodness, it's a difficult thing, but I am enjoying the book. As you can tell, it's a very different kind of children's novel. Very magical, but the magic is it's got a strange surreal dreamlike quality to it, doesn't it? I mean, the cat we really don't have any sense of scale for some of these things, what's going on. It's just very, very strange. But it's a classic, and I wanted to share that with you. Million 20, yes it does. Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Oh my goodness. Let's see. So the rest of the week. Sunday, if everything goes according to plan, as always, that's always the depending thing, we will be reading the next stave of A Christmas Carol. And it is a long one. It is probably the most wordy part of the book. So be prepared for that. And I will mention on Sunday what this upcoming week will be like. But for now, I am really worn out from this reading. So let's see who there is we can raid tonight. Okay, let's see. Oh, yeah, um, you know, let's read Sophia for now. She is reading The Nutcracker. And it is the holidays. We have to raid that. Okay. Well, my dear scholars, I say unto you, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Till we meet each other again at the study. Take care, and I shall see you next time. Till then, farewell and bye bye.